Hi, gals. Obviously, as always, please excuse if Flossie comes into the picture. But long time no webinar. It's been a few weeks, but I wanted to make a webinar that was going to be beneficial and informative, and I didn't want to do it on any old topic. So I thought, why not do it on calories, macros, and more? I feel like it's the basics to know what calories and macros are. And while some of us do obviously know what calories and macros are, it'd be interesting for me to break it down a little bit, show you how I actually calculate your calories or deficit calories, the importance of macros, the importance of understanding how we actually burn calories or use calories, looking at energy balance and energy availability. And then I've also done a bit of a macro breakdown to explain what each of the macronutrients do and what their jobs are, because it's very easy to just say, oh yeah, I know it's protein, carbs and fats, but like, what does that actually do for us? What does that do for the body? Why is it important to have such a balanced plate? And yeah, I'll obviously go into a little bit more detail. So let's kick it off with what actually are they? So what is a calorie? A calorie is a unit of energy that originated from the caloric theory of heat. And a macro or macronutrient is the main three, essentially fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And a micronutrient is vitamins and minerals that are equally important but are consumed in very small amounts. So, like vitamin A, C, D, K, all the vitamins. So, a lot of you that have come to me on this fitness journey that you're currently on are typically in a calorie deficit or at a maintenance. However, how do I actually calculate this? I don't just pluck a number out of thin air. There is a formula for this. And I kind of wanted to go into what actually a deficit is and what is maintenance and what is surplus and why it's important that we get the correct calories. But also, as you all know, especially if we've discussed your calories recently and if you have a calorie goal, I never give you a set number of the exact amount of calories that I want to hit, because it's all well and good having this formula, but we don't actually know what your maintenance calories are until we play around with them a little bit. Until your body, essentially your scale weight, comes to a standstill, that's when we know that's your maintenance calories. So it's a lot of playing around, a lot of trial and error, and obviously depends on your weight, and if your weight is one to fluctuate often, or if you've lost a significant amount of weight or gained weight, your calories are going to be different, which some of you have lost quite a lot of body fat and scale weight. So we've gone back in, recalculated your calories because they're essentially different. You need less energy to survive, essentially. So yeah, let's go into it. A deficit calorie. So this is when your body is in an energy deficit and essentially you're consuming less than you need for your everyday life. So your body is turning to its fat stores and using its body fat as energy. It's such an awful way to think about it, because it's like you're basically not eating enough. That is essentially what a calorie deficit is. You're not eating enough for your body to maintain itself and to crack on as normal. Obviously, none of you are in a very dangerous calorie deficit. I usually take about 20% off, which I'm going to go into in detail. But for example, you know, the 1200 calorie deficits are extremely dangerous, especially for the female body. We can sacrifice a lot, like our hormone health, our sex health. We can go into amenorrhea, I think it's called, essentially loss of period, which can be very difficult to get back. One of my best friends actually lost her period for about 4 years because her body wasn't, it wasn't working the way it should have. She was essentially eating less, way less, and your body basically attacks its sex hormones. So a calorie deficit is just eating a little bit less than you need. Maintenance is staying exactly where you are right now, right here, right now. And then a surplus is eating above what you need. Inevitably, during a surplus, you will gain a little bit of body fat because you're eating more food than your body needs to get on with its daily life. So what does it do with its spare energy? It stores it as fat. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to put on a whole stone of body fat, but inevitably with the extra food, you are going to gain a very slight amount of body fat. But as explained as we go on further in this PowerPoint, is that once you gain a little bit of extra scale weight, inevitably your body needs more energy to just to move. So it kind of all catches up with itself, and you essentially do burn more than what you were burning if you were in like a smaller body, because your body needs more energy to move. So it's not like you would rapidly gain weight. It's a very it increases nice and slowly. So how do I actually calculate your calories? This is the formula I use here. I essentially calculate your BMR first, and this is why you have all the questions on your onboarding questionnaire, because this is how I calculate calories. So I use this formula here to calculate your basal metabolic rate, and then I take into consideration your activity levels. So whether you're sedentary, lightly active, moderately active, or very active. Very active would be like an athlete who is training like 2 hours a day, that kind of vibe. And sedentary is, if you sat at a desk for 8 hours a day, maybe manage to get out for a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, but that's pretty much it. That's what I would class as sedentary. So using this formula, I calculate your BMR, and I've done a little example here. So if I was a female sitting at 65 kg, I was 165 centimeters, 28 years old, and I'm moderately active. So I work as a waitress. I easily get 20 to 30,000 steps in a day, and I'm constantly on my feet. I'm constantly burning energy. This is the calculation that I would do in order to get your BMR. So this person's basal metabolic rate will be about 1400 calories. And these calories are quite literally the calories that you just need to survive. Like, if you were doing zero exercise, zero movement, you were in bed and all your body had to do was digest food and sleep and breathe, those are the calories that you'd need, 1400 calories. But we're throwing it into the works a very moderately active woman. So her maintenance calories are sitting at around 2,222 calories. So that would be the calories that she needs to eat in order to stay at 65 kg, to be the exact same size, weight that she is now. If she wanted to come into a deficit phase, I would take away around 20%, which is a very safe amount of calories, around 20% of that, and it would give us around 1783. Now I would give this lady between 1783 and 1850 just to be on the safe side. We don't want to dip into anything too low. And as I've probably spoken to you all before, anything kind of under 1500 is just absolutely not. It's not something I'd be ever comfortable giving out to somebody. So that is a safe amount of calories for her to go on about her day, in order to lose some body fat. But how do we actually burn and use the calories that we consume? And this is one thing that I think for sure, I got completely wrong when I first started my fitness journey, when I first stepped foot in the gym or in the garden in lockdown doing my own little workouts. But we burn calories in so many different ways than just movement. Our TDEE, so our total daily energy expenditure, is split up into 4 components. The biggest part of this is our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, which is genetic. We can't do anything about it. That makes up a massive 70%. So that's our things like digesting our food, sleeping, hand movements, anything like that, any movement of any sort or internal that our body just needs generally for us to live. Then comes in our NEAT, so our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I bang on about increasing this if your goal is fat loss, because that makes up a big 15%. This is things that are non-intentional exercise, like walking a little bit further away from the shop or doing some cleaning, making sure you take the stairs instead of the lift, like all those little things that do add up throughout the day. That use energy that isn't purposeful energy, like exercise. Then comes in your TEF, so your thermic effect of food. If you're someone who currently eats around 2,000 calories a day, you will actually use 200 calories just digesting your food. So that's a big one that people don't even think about, is obviously digesting food is a big task for the human body. We have to have the energy in order to do that. Where does energy come from? Calories. Like, calories is just this big word that people throw around, when in reality it's the energy that our body needs to go about its every day. So we burn a 10% of our daily calories to digesting food, and then a measly 5% to exercise, which in the grand scheme of things just shows you how, I'm not going to say unimportant, but unimportant exercise is for aesthetic goals. And whilst it is great, and obviously I'm a personal trainer, I'm an online coach, I would recommend exercise to every man and their dog. But this is why it's so important to focus on exercise that isn't solely focused on aesthetics, because If you're exercising, solely just exercising 7 days a week in the gym and just doing like a little bit of a session every single day, and you're not focusing on everything else, you're not going to get very far, because that only takes up 5% of your total daily energy expenditure. So absolutely fantastic to exercise for our mental health, our bones, our body composition, our energy levels, our general health. But when it comes to fat loss and actually burning calories, exercise only makes up about 5% of that. So that's why it's super important. And I always bang on about exercising for more than just aesthetic reasons. Hello, lady. Okay, moving on to energy balance and energy availability. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because this mainly applies to like female athletes, especially energy availability. But energy availability represents the amount of energy available for other metabolic processes, in particular hormone health, after accounting for exercise energy expenditure. So it's the energy that you've got left, essentially the calories that you've got left for all the other metabolic processes like within the body. Energy balance is a difference between energy intake and energy expenditure. And like I've said here, this can get very technical, but it's essentially about balancing energy in versus energy out. Consuming excess energy does not always result in continuous weight gain. Since the weight gain is accompanied by, I don't know what that says, possibly a source of exercise in energy expenditure that leads to a steady state of energy balance as its new higher body weight. So this is why I was saying before, if you're increasing on the scale, so if you're gaining body weight, everything else is going to increase as well. Your energy expenditure, the energy that you're spending from your body is going to increase as well, because you need more energy for your body to tick along. You're eating more food, so your TEF is going up higher. So for example, if you're consuming 2,500 calories a day, 250 of that is going to be spent through the thermic effect of food. Your body needs to use more energy walking around. And I'm not talking about you're getting 5 stone heavier. I'm talking about, a couple of kilograms heavier. Your body's going to need more energy. And this is a very, very slow and, meaningful process. We can't be the smallest version of ourselves all year round, especially if your goal is fat loss. It's very important that we creep back up to maintenance. And, there's nothing wrong going into a surplus, especially if your goal is to increase muscle mass. And I think sometimes calorie deficits are very, very glorified, and it's never really spoken about how important it is to come up back up to maintenance, which is the whole role of homeostasis in the body, which I might do another webinar on. But that's essentially when your body is doing everything it can in order to come back up to this comfortable place. I've actually mentioned this to a couple of you who are currently in a deficit phase, who are looking to coming up to a maintenance or coming off tracking altogether. And how, or if you've just come from a maintenance phase, coming into a deficit phase, how your body basically does everything it can to stay at this really happy place at its maintenance. So if you're somebody at the moment who's maintained a nice steady weight on the scales, or you've not seen a visual increase, of any sort, and you've kind of stayed at this maintenance pattern for some time, your body's very happy there. It wants to stay there. Its energy balance is perfect. The balance in and the balance out is perfect. It's really enjoying the space. You've got enough energy to do about your daily thing, but you're not putting too much pressure on the body in order for it to gain weight. It's very, very happy. It's in a state of homeostasis. So when you come into a deficit, the body does things like sends more hunger signals to the brain. So it's very important when I ask that question, especially if you're in a deficit, what your hunger level is like, because your body essentially wants you to be hungrier because it wants to stay in this lovely, happy maintenance phase. It doesn't want to go into a deficit. It doesn't want to be deprived of energy. So that's also really important to understand, is we shouldn't deprive our body of energy all year round. So I wanted to go into a little macro breakdown as well. The importance of protein, carbs, and fats in the body, and kind of what they do, what their role is in the body. As most of you probably know, proteins are the building blocks for muscle mass maintenance and building, and obviously muscle is an extremely important tissue in the body. Protein is around 4 calories per gram. It's typically found in fish, meat, beans, and pulses, and obviously any protein products. Protein repairs and rebuilds every tissue in the body: hair, skin, bone, and muscle. Typically, it's advised that you should consume 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, depending on your fitness goals. So if you were somebody that came to me and said, I really, really, really want to grow my glutes, I want to double my glutes in size, I really want to increase my muscle mass, essentially, Firstly, you want to think about going into a calorie surplus. Secondly, you want to be eating a lot of protein. So if you're somebody that weighs 60 kg, you want to be hitting minimum like 120. If you can go above that, amazing. If you can't, 120 is a great little starting point. Carbohydrates, carb up your life. Carbs are the body's main source of energy, like I've told people before. Carbs are 9 calories per gram and they help control blood glucose levels and insulin metabolism. Once carbs are broken down into glucose, the glucose feeds the body's cells, tissues, and organs. Carbs are split into simple and complex carbs, which are further broken down into sugars, fibre, and starch. So an example of simple or refined carbs are things like white bread, white pasta, sweets, anything that's gone through a process to be what it is today. And complex carbs are more natural sources like brown products, like brown rice, brown pasta, brown anything, porridges, whole grains, and veggies. So the things that are typically good for the gut, high in fibre. And then obviously you've got your simple carbs or refined carbs, which are a quick hit energy source. So for example, all of you know that I did High Rocks and my energy source of choice was Haribo's because they're a fantastic refined carb and they will get into my bloodstream and into my energy system very, very quickly. And for example, for my breakfast, I had a whopping bowl of porridge because that's a slow release energy source. It's a complex carb. So it's very important that we understand that. Coming into the second page here, carbs don't get us through a workout. That's not their sole purpose in life. Like, yes, I absolutely want to see you consuming some carbohydrates between half an hour to 2 hours before your workout, depending on what carbohydrate of choice you go for. But not only this, they really aid our energy in both our body and our brain. If you're someone who struggles with brain fog, you're probably eating not enough carbohydrates. You need carbs in the brain for it to work. We need carbs. We need a lot of carbs. The body loves carbs. Okay, last thing, stop banging on about carbohydrates. Fats and how important fats are in the body. And everybody hates fats. Everybody gives fats a hard time, when in reality they are extremely essential, especially as women. They are the body's secondary preferred source of energy. So if you were a little bit low on your carbohydrate levels, your body is going to turn to fats. Foot protein, that's doing nothing for us. If somebody said I had a piece of chicken before the gym, that's doing nothing for you, babes. Get an avocado down you, or get a piece of toast. Fats essentially feed our sex hormones. They help us absorb and store fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are typically foods naturally high in fat, like salmon, avocado, dark chocolate, things like that, and nuts, things like that. Fats have a positive impact during the luteal phase as our fat oxidation decreases. So our body finds it more difficult to absorb fat-soluble vitamins during the luteal phase than it does any other phase in our cycle. So keeping your fats nice and high during your luteal phase is going to be super beneficial for your sex hormones. It's also going to really help us absorb those essential vitamins. They, like I said, help meet the demands of our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone regulation. And they are also 9 calories per gram. They're exactly the same as carbs. So categorically, fats do not make you fat. They cannot make you gain body fat. An overconsumption of calories gains body fat, not fats. So fats are typically split into polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, and saturated. And as humans, we should aim to consume more poly and mono fats like salmon, avocado, dark chocolate, and olive oil. Saturated fats are things like your processed foods and your takeaways, which are also essential for the soul. So please don't neglect them either. They are absolutely essential. I had a Domino's last night and it just fed my soul. Day 1 of period, you know. But yeah, I hope that was really beneficial for you girlies. I hope I broke that down understandably and that everybody kind of understands where I'm coming from. Because it's very, very easy to just look online or kind of have this vague idea of what calories are and what macros are. But when you break it down and understand what they actually do for us and what they do for the body and why it's important for us to consume these different macronutrients in order to fuel ourselves correctly, I really do feel like you your plate differently, like balancing your plate so much different. When you focus on fueling yourself correctly, it's so much more beneficial and you get so much more out of it than just thinking about the calorific intake per meal. So I hope that makes sense, and it's also nice for you all to see how I actually calculate your calories, and in a safe way and in a sustainable way, and why it's important for us not to always stay in a deficit. It's very bad for the body. How we use energy availability, energy balance, and the macro breakdown. I hope you found that beneficial. And if anybody has any questions or anything, please don't hesitate to ask. If anybody has another webinar idea that they want me to do, anything that they've heard of online and they're like, don't really know what that is, then I absolutely will do that for you guys. Just let me know. But yeah, I hope this was beneficial.